Hello everyone. This is a PowerPoint presentation on some basic concepts of essay writing and essay structure. And it's a review of some general ideas that you probably got in English 1A, but it might be helpful just to have a quick review of some basic essay structure ideas at the beginning of English 1B. So let's just get into it. So first of all, the typical college essay has an introductory paragraph, and then it has a couple of paragraphs in the body of the essay, depending on how long your essay is, and then a conclusion paragraph. So I'm going to talk about essay writing with that particular essay structure. I guess I will say at the beginning here that usually the introductory paragraph is one paragraph. But let me back up. Something I want to say about essay writing in general, is that writing is an art form. It's not like the mathematical sciences or like the laws of physics, where there's a set of rules that are written in stone and you can never break those rules. Like you can never break the laws of physics. Essay writing is not like that. It's more like painting. So it's more of an art form, and that means that there are no rules that are written in stone that tell you you must do it like this all the time. Now, having said that, there are guidelines that can tell us if some writing is more effective, or if some writing is not as successful at communicating an idea. But that's basically what writing is. Writing is an art form, and there are guidelines that can help us understand if the writing is more successful or less successful at communicating an idea. And that's really what writing is. Writing is communication. It's about communicating ideas. And so the typical college essay is one particular format of communicating ideas. It tends to follow a particular pattern, and I'll talk about what the pattern is. But it's important to remember that these rules are not written in stone, like I said. So in the beginning, the introductory paragraph, it tends to be one paragraph. It doesn't necessarily have to be one paragraph. If you're writing a much longer essay, in this class, your essays are probably going to be about 3 to 5 pages long. In other classes, if you're writing a longer research paper, your introductory paragraph may be more than one paragraph. So, but here I'm going to talk about it as if it's one paragraph. So an introductory paragraph should have the following elements. In the beginning, there's some sort of hook. You want to start off with something in the beginning that catches the eye of the reader and makes them feel like they want to keep reading. Then you start going into the general idea of what the subject matter of your essay is going to be. You want to keep it very general. You don't want to get really specific yet. And then you want to end the paragraph with a thesis statement. Now, sometimes people say that the thesis ought to be in the middle of the paragraph or in the beginning. Again, like I said, I'm going to keep coming back to this again and again. Writing is an art form. It's not like the mathematical sciences where you have to follow rules and you can never break them. People are going to tell you to put your thesis sentence in different places. In the beginning, in the middle, in the end of the introductory paragraph. I guess all that really matters is that you need to remember a thesis is one sentence, and it's one sentence that sums up your main idea of your essay. And it should pop out to the reader. I like to say that. It should pop, meaning the reader will see your thesis sentence and it will pop out to them. So the reader does not have to hunt around for your thesis sentence. It pops out to them, it's easy to see, and it sums up your main idea of the essay. Over here on the right side of the screen, I say that the introductory paragraph is often visually depicted as a triangle. So you can see in the middle of this slide, there's a triangle. There's a flat, one of the flat sides is towards the top, and then one of the points of the triangle is facing down. And inside the triangle, there's an arrow going from the top of the screen to the bottom. So the arrow is pointing from one of the flat sides down towards a point that is pointing down to the bottom. And the reason people often use this diagram to communicate what a introductory paragraph is and what it's supposed to do is because the introductory paragraph is supposed to start off with a more broad general idea, and then it gradually moves towards a specific point. Usually that specific point is a thesis sentence, and that's why I said most of the time your thesis sentence is at the end of your paragraph. It's the last sentence of your introductory paragraph. But like I said, I keep saying it doesn't necessarily have to be there. Writing is an art form. It's not one of the mathematical sciences where you can't break rules. Now, in teaching writing, I always talk about how writing is an art form. I've said it several times now. But at the same time, I'm not just helping you become better writers. I'm also helping you become students that are going to get higher grades in your other classes. And most of the time, those two things overlap with each other. If I teach you to become a better writer, you're probably going to get better grades in your other classes. Sometimes those things don't necessarily overlap with each other because I don't like the idea of telling people to do one particular type of writing all the time. Something that you need to do going into the future is you need to be able to adapt. There are different people in different places that are going to tell you to write things in different ways. So what is considered successful writing in an English class or in a history class with elaborate vocabulary and sophisticated use of language may not be considered successful writing, for instance, in a science class. In a science class, they want you to be use very short sentences, just stick to the point, don't use elaborate language. So you're going to have to be able to adapt to different environments. In a science class, in a history class, in an English class, after you finish college, if you're a police officer filling out reports, if you're working in an advertising firm and you have to type up some presentation that you're going to give to your boss, whatever. I mean, all these different environments are going to have different standards that they have that determine what is considered successful writing or what is not considered successful writing. So you need to develop the skill of being able to jump into different environments and asking people, talking to people about what is considered successful writing and what isn't, what is considered effective communication and what isn't. You need to look at what other people around you are doing and talk to them and try to emulate what they are doing. So you need to be able to learn and you need to be able to adapt. It's not possible for any one class to communicate to you what is considered effective communication in every environment you're going to run into in the future. That's just not possible. So that's why I keep saying writing is an art form. Okay, there's no rule written in stone that tells you how you have to do it all the time, and you need to be able to learn how to write in different ways and to adapt in different environments. Now, the typical college essay, like I said, with one paragraph as an introduction and then several paragraphs in the body of the essay and then a one paragraph conclusion, you're going to write that way in college. You may or may not continue writing like that in the future. If you're a journalist writing an article for a newspaper, you might follow sort of a similar format. So it's just important to remember that. And the reason I wanted to mention that is because a minute ago I said that I want to turn you into good writers, and I want to try to give you the ability to think independently and to adapt to different situations. And I want to help you get better grades in your other classes. And sometimes all of those things overlap, but sometimes they don't. So I keep telling you that writing is an art form and you want to do what works in different environments. And as far as the thesis sentence is concerned, different people are going to tell you to put the thesis in different places. I would recommend while you're in college, put your thesis sentence at the end of the paragraph because, like, for instance, when you take that history class or that sociology class or that psychology class and you're writing an essay, it might be easy for the other professor to see your thesis sentence if it's the last sentence of the first paragraph. So you want your thesis to pop. You want it to pop out to the reader. It's easy to see. And so you want to spend some time making it a very well-written sentence, but you also want to position it in a place where it's going to be easy for other people to see. So, like I said, if you're in another class, I would suggest putting your thesis sentence as the last sentence of the first paragraph. But, again, go to office hours, talk to the other professor, do a rough draft ahead of time and take the rough draft into office hours. And, so the thesis may be best to put your thesis as the last sentence of the first paragraph, but you might talk to another professor and you might say you want to put it in a different place, and if it works, then do it. And I guess that's what we're going to keep coming back to. Writing is an art form. You have to be able to adapt to different environments. Different environments are going to have different standards that determine what is effective writing or what isn't. You have to be able to learn to adapt to different situations, and if it works, then do it. Okay, so just keep that in mind. But typical college essay, you got a hook in the beginning, you got a couple sentences where you give us an idea of what the rest of the subject matter and the rest of the essay is going to be about, and then you give us one sentence, your thesis, that sums up your main idea. And so the structure of the essay is starting off with a broad general idea, and you're gradually working towards a more specific point towards the end of the paragraph, in general. All right, the body of the essay. So I would suggest you do stuff on scratch paper, work out outlines, put your ideas on scratch paper before you begin typing. It'll probably make it easier for you to type your essay if you plan your ideas out on a piece of scratch paper first. It'll probably take you less time to type the essay, and your ideas will probably be more organized as a result. But okay, what does this diagram mean? So I've got, on the right side of the screen here, I've got the word thesis at the top, and then underneath that, I have the words claim and support. And that line, claim and support, is repeated several times. Claim and support, and then underneath that, claim and support, and then underneath that, claim and support, until eventually we get to the bottom there and it says the conclusion at the bottom. And then I have a number of arrows where each line is pointing to a line up above it. So what do these arrows mean? So on the left here, you can see the lines that say claim and support. Each of them has an arrow pointing from that line that says claim and support up to the thesis at the top. And what does that mean? So first of all, each section of your essay should have some sort of claim. I'll use that word claim a number of times throughout the semester. Excuse me. And your claim is basically an opinion or an argument, something that you're trying to convince somebody of. You might even think of it as just a mini thesis. In fact, maybe I just should have called it that. I mean, or maybe we could just say that the thesis itself is a claim. It's an argument. So you've got your main claim, your main argument, which is your thesis statement, and then each section of your essay has a main idea within that section. It's some claim, it's some argument you're trying to prove inside each section of your essay. And each of those claims, those smaller claims, the main point of each section of your essay should be connecting to or supporting the main claim, the main argument of the whole essay, which is your thesis sentence. And that's why I have these arrows on the left side of the diagram. Each arrow points from the claim in each section up to the thesis sentence. And that means that you've got your main argument, your beginning, and then along the way, you got a series of smaller arguments. Each of them is supporting and developing the larger argument that you gave us in the beginning. Okay, so you've got your main argument, your main idea in your thesis sentence at the beginning of the essay, and then each section of your essay is supporting or following from that main argument that you gave us in the beginning. So, As long as each section of your essay connects to that main argument, then you're not straying off topic. You don't want the reader to think, hey, why is this paragraph here? I don't understand why it connects to how it connects to your main idea. All right? So as long as you work out an outline and make sure that each section, each idea in each section of your essay is connecting to that main argument that you gave us in the beginning, then you won't stray off topic. Now, on the right side here, you see a series of arrows where each line that says claim and support has an arrow pointing up to the next line above it that also says claim and support. So what does that mean? That means that each section should connect to the section that came before it. Okay, so I guess the basic idea on this page is that each section of your essay, in the body of your essay, should connect to two things. It should connect to the thesis, the argument you gave us in the beginning, and it should also connect to the section that came before it. That way, if each section is connecting to your thesis, then each section of your essay feels like it does not stray off topic. It's still related to the main idea you're talking about in the essay. And if each section of the essay also connects to the section that came before it, then you have a nice flow of thought. So you want each section of your essay to be connecting to the thing that came before it, or maybe saying the same thing with different words. Each section of the essay is setting up the next section that came after it. Okay. And I guess I'll just follow up on that really quick. A lot of people use transition sentences. So you probably learned about that in high school. It's okay if you don't remember it. But transition sentences, the whole idea of having transition sentences is that the last sentence of one paragraph sets up or connects to the first sentence of the next paragraph. And that's an important thing to do. You want your ideas to feel like they have a flow. They have a nice flow where one thing leads logically to the next. But just remember, there are two ways to create a feeling of flow, where one idea leads logically to the next. And one way of doing that is with transition sentences. So you absolutely should be using transition sentences. But another way of doing that, or maybe not another way, but an additional way of doing that, you should be doing these two things together. The first thing you should be doing is you should be using transition sentences. The other thing you should also be doing is you should be working on an outline to make sure that the ideas themselves build on each other. And that's more difficult to do. So the first thing that many people focus on is using transition sentences to make the reader feel like one paragraph flows into the next, and that's important. But as your ideas become more sophisticated, the ideas themselves, aside from the transition sentences, the ideas themselves should feel like they are building on each other. And as the semester progresses, we'll get a better understanding of that. When we look at the rough drafts, I'll be commenting on the rough drafts and I'll be talking about how ideas build on each other. And it's one of those things that you kind of get a handle on it as you practice it. So you want the ideas, the concepts themselves to build, and you also want to use transition sentences to create a flow of thought. Okay? And along the way, each section should also be connecting to the thesis so that it doesn't feel like you're straying off topic. Okay, so use of support. So in English 1A, I teach students something that I call the support sandwich. And you notice in the previous slide, right here, I just backed up to the previous slide. I already mentioned that each section of the essay has a claim and support. And so let's go to the next slide. So let's talk specifically about the use of support. I use the word support because that the use of the word support encapsulates a lot of different types of things. It can be specific examples. It can be personal observations, personal experience. It can be quotes from a reading assignment or from your research. It can be statistics. But support is basically what you are using to prove or to support a claim. So try to do this in every section of your essay. You want to have a claim. So first of all, what are you trying to prove, or what are you trying to argue? What is your point? What is your main idea in this particular section of your essay? And then you want to have at least one piece of support. In some of our essays in the beginning, we're only using personal experience and personal observations. As time goes on, we're going to use quotes from our reading assignments and also research. So, and we'll be talking about different types, how to use different types of support. But you want to have a claim, you want to have support, and then you see on the right side of the screen here, I have at the top, it says claim. Each section of your essay should have an opinion, something that you're trying to prove. The next thing, it says support. What are you using to back up or to illustrate your claims in this section of the essay? Are you using a quote? Are you using a personal observation, etc.? And then the third thing here, I call interpretation or commentary. And well, I'll read through this first and I'll talk about it. So what does the quote mean? What do you want your reader to understand about the quote? How and why does this piece of support back up or illustrate the point you're trying to make? And again, I use the word quote there, but it might be a statistic, it might be a personal experience. But what you're doing in that last part right there that I call interpretation or commentary is you're telling us, why is this piece of support important? What does it mean? What is the lesson? What do you want the reader to think about this piece of support, and how and why does it back up the claim that you're talking about? So there's three pieces here. There's the claim, and then there's the support, and then there's the third piece where you kind of talk about the support and you explain why does the support back up or illustrate or connect to the claim. Okay, explain the connection to the reader. So why do I call this a sandwich? I call it the support sandwich. I guess you can see why. You see that the support is in between, and then on one side you have the claim, and on the other side you have interpretation or commentary. All right, and so you've got the support in the middle, and then you've got your ideas sandwiching around the support. You've got your ideas surrounding the support. And so sometimes when I put comments on people's essays, I will continue to use the sandwich metaphor. So I often refer to the claim as the top piece of bread. I will talk about the interpretation or the commentary as the bottom piece of bread. And then I'll talk about the support in the middle. I'll talk about that as the meat and cheese. So I'm sorry if that metaphor bothers you, but it's convenient. And that's what I talk about in English 1A. In English 1B, things get a little bit more complicated, but I'll leave that alone for now. Remember, this PowerPoint presentation is a review of the types of things that I would like people to have learned about in English 1A. And it's okay if you took English 1A a while ago and you don't really remember these things. This is why I'm doing a PowerPoint presentation, just to remind you. So just remember, this is a PowerPoint presentation that is a review of English 1A concepts. And then we're going to take these concepts and continue building on them. So things will get, I'm talking about the use of support in this particular slide. Things in English 1B will get a little bit more complicated as things go on, but let's just keep reviewing English 1A right now. So here's an example of the support sandwich. So I'll read through this paragraph and I'll just stop and talk about stuff along the way. So being stuck indoors might seem difficult at first, but human beings are perfectly capable of adapting to uncomfortable situations. So you see the note that I put there. The first sentence is the claim. You also notice a claim is often something that people can disagree with. You can tell if it's a claim if somebody could give the opposite argument, or they could disagree with you. So the first sentence is saying, I'll read it through again. Being stuck indoors might seem difficult at first, but human beings are perfectly capable of adapting to uncomfortable situations. You notice somebody else could disagree with you if you said that sentence. They could say, well, no, I have a little bit more of a negative view of human nature. I don't really think that human beings are capable of adapting to things. Maybe human beings try to avoid uncomfortable situations as opposed to adapting to uncomfortable situations. So you can see how people could have a debate about that. The first sentence is a claim. Somebody could disagree with it. Let's keep going. For instance, and then you see the note I put there, here comes the support. Okay, you can tell that the support, some sort of example or some piece of support to back up or to illustrate the claim is coming because we see the words for instance. So there's lots of words that signal that the support is coming. For instance, or for example, or the author says that, or one time I experienced, right? There are these types of words that tell us that a piece of support is coming. So, for instance, one anthropologist who studied societies in Arctic regions commented that, quote, "In communities that live above the Arctic Circle, it is a common experience to spend long periods of time indoors with family during the perpetual darkness of the winter months. Living in close confines, tempers often flare, and people do have arguments and conflicts, but many of these societies have developed specific traditions that foster conflict resolution among family members and that promote shared activities, which have the effect of giving people a unified purpose, which also decreases intergroup conflict." Close quote. And I'll also be reviewing about proper citation. But author and page number right there, and then a period. All right. This quote illustrates, okay, so now we know here comes the bottom piece of bread. The person is going to explain why the quote is important, what is the author saying, how and why does the quote back up or illustrate the claim that the person gave at the beginning of the paragraph. This quote illustrates how, so here comes the interpretation of the support and the commentary. Societies adapt over time to stressful circumstances and find ways of coping and even thriving in situations that, at first, might seem unbearable to the rest of us. This example can also serve as a lesson to our society right now. Things might be stressful for us, cooped up indoors, but we are capable of developing more sophisticated conflict resolution and preventing conflict in the first place by finding common purpose. So, and in the note I put at the end there, the student ends by showing us how the support helps to back up or to illustrate the point that they're making. So, all right. So you can see all three pieces. I call it the support sandwich, the claim, the support, and then the interpretation or the commentary at the end. The student gives a claim in the beginning. They give a quote. Remember, there's different types of support. In this particular example, they decided to use a quote. And then at the end, they explained what the significance of the quote is and how and why it backs up or illustrates the claim they gave at the beginning of the paragraph. So this is an example of a paragraph that has all three parts to it. Now, I also want to make it clear that the support sandwich doesn't necessarily have to be all three elements in one paragraph. It might take more than one paragraph to do this. Maybe the first two elements will be in one paragraph, and then the third element will be in the next paragraph, depending on how long or how highly developed the ideas are. Maybe it takes more than one sentence to develop the claim. Maybe it takes several sentences to develop the bottom piece of bread, the interpretation or the commentary. But I would say try to have all three elements in each section of your essay, the support sandwich. Okay, now let's talk about the conclusion paragraph. So again, I keep saying that writing is an art form, and it has guidelines that tell us whether or not the communication is effective, but different environments have different guidelines that determine what is considered successful or not successful writing or communication. But again, I'll stick to the basic college essay. And remember, I said at the beginning, a typical college essay has one paragraph for the introduction, a number of paragraphs in the body of the essay, and then one paragraph for the conclusion. And remember that the introductory paragraph had a triangle with one of the flat sides pointing up and then one of the sharp points pointing down. And that was to communicate that the introductory paragraph started off with a more broad general concept and then gradually worked towards a more focused point about something. The conclusion paragraph can be thought of as being kind of a mirror image. The triangle here has a point facing up, and that's to communicate that we start off with a specific point, and then the paragraph gradually moves towards a more broad general statement, a more broad general concept about something at the end of the essay. Let's see, on the left here, I wrote the conclusion paragraph should touch back on your important ideas, and it should give us a final thought, which can be a prediction, a lesson, a warning, etc. The essay should end with an idea we haven't seen yet. Yeah, so that's an important point to make. A couple of things I'll say about introductory paragraphs. So I would agree it's a good idea to start off with some specific point that you made in the body of the essay, and then you're working towards some general, more broad concept. Structurally, that's a good idea. But something else that is an important point that I wrote on the left side of the screen there is that the essay should end with an idea we have not seen yet. So sometimes people talk about how they've learned that you should restate your thesis in the conclusion. I mean, okay, that can be a good idea. You should certainly touch back on the ideas you were talking about in the essay. So the conclusion is a place where you should touch back. One of the things I feel like I write on lots of people's essays is that they don't give us that final thought. That sentence I put there, the essay should end with an idea we haven't seen yet. I know in high school, sometimes they use that term final thought. And okay, I'll go with that. But there should be something. The important idea to remember here is that the conclusion should do two things. It should touch back on the ideas you talked about in the rest of the essay, and we should see something else in the conclusion that we have not seen yet in the rest of the essay. Because if the conclusion simply restates the thesis and touches back on ideas that you talked about in the rest of the essay, then the conclusion is basically just saying the same thing twice. You've repeated ideas that you talked about in the rest of the essay and not given us anything else. There needs to be something else there that we haven't seen yet. Otherwise, the reader feels like you're making me read the same thing twice, and there's no purpose in doing that. So you need to touch back on the ideas you talked about in the rest of the essay, but then you need to give us something else we haven't seen yet. And I gave some suggestions here. A larger lesson, a prediction for the future, a warning, some larger understanding of something, some different way of looking at things that we haven't seen yet. There has to be some sort of creativity or originality in the conclusion to give us something we haven't seen yet that justifies repeating the ideas you talked about in the rest of the essay. Okay, so that's a quick overview of the typical college essay: introductory paragraph, the body of the essay, the conclusion, and effective use of support in the body of the essay.